The January 15th, 2019 meeting of the Carlynton School District Board of Directors is called to order. First order of business is to have the pledge, so Ed, you'll lead us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Secretary, please call the roll.
Director Mendoza.
Here.
Director Russo.
Here.
Director O'Brien.
Here.
Director Frank.
Here.
Director Apple.
Here.
Director Simsick.
Here.
Director Zalewski.
She's not able to be here tonight.
Director Honchar.
He's not able to be here tonight.
Director Schreiber.
Here. There's a time of our meeting where we allow members of the public to comment on any item that's on the agenda tonight. Does anyone in the public have any agenda item they want to discuss? If not, we'll keep moving. I see we have a presentation lined up, Dr. Ventura.
We do, since our state testing results have come out from PSSA and Keystone, I'd asked Ed if he would give the board, emphasis added, a brief presentation. There were a couple issues that we need to address at the high school, and we have the high school principal and assistant principals here to make some additional comments. But
Thank you, Dr. D'Imperio, and thank you very much for affording me the opportunity to speak to you today. I'm not going to reiterate some of the things we talked about over the summer and when the Keystone scores come out. We've already talked about those numbers. Today, what I wanted to bring to your attention is the bringing out of the new PA Future Readiness Index. That's the public report card that comes out over the web that anybody can access about our school district. Over the past year, we talked about the transition from the Pennsylvania School Performance Profile to the PA Future Readiness Index, and today we're going to get a little bit of a look at what the differences are. Even though we introduced today the PA Future Readiness Index, the Pennsylvania School Performance Profile has not gone away. It's just not published any longer. So it's still used on Act 82-1 for teacher evaluations and administrator evaluations under the Act 82 building score level. So just to bring that out real quickly, since all three building principals are here, I'd like to commend all three of them because all three building scores went up from last year to this year. So in Carnegie went to 77.2. She rose her building 13.2 points over 1 year. That's astounding. Congratulations. The Crafton Elementary School went up to 66.6. That went up 2.1 from the previous year. And in Carlynton Junior Senior High School went up 5.8 points. They're up at 76.5. So the building scores are, especially Carnegie and the Junior Senior High School, probably at the highest levels that they've ever been. And unfortunately, they don't get published anymore. So that's kind of where it is. But again, congratulations to all the principals for doing a very fine job in raising those particular scores. Now they bring out the Future Readiness Index, and this is what the website looks like. And just to make it brief, I don't want to scroll through all the pages. So what I did is I printed out everything that you would be able to see on there. So as you start from the beginning at the top of the PA Future Readiness Index, everything now is colors and arrows. Blue means you've exceeded the standard. Green means you've met the standard. And red means that you have not met the standard. And then they go to arrows. So you're going to get a blue arrow, a green arrow, or something like that. So obviously the arrow is going up. You've exceeded your numbers from the previous year. If your arrow goes down, you basically say a green arrow, you met the standard, but it's lower than you did from the year before. So basically, when they talk about the Future Readiness Index, there are certain measures that they always talk about. They talk about the state assessment measures. Let me roll this down just a little bit, if I can. They talk about what those state assessment measures are. Okay, and the state assessment measures are the percent proficient advanced on PSSA and Keystone combined. Meeting the annual growth expectations of PBOS. Have your students grown 1 year's worth of growth for 1 year's worth of education, and a percent of advanced PSSA and Keystone exam. They call those the state assessment measures. They talk about on-track measures. They talk about English language proficiency for the ELs, the English learners. They talk about chronic absenteeism. At the building levels at the elementary school, one of their key indicators is grade 3 reading. And in 7th grade, they talk about 7th grade mathematics as early indicators for success. And then they talk about the third one, which is the college and career measures, which they talk about graduation rate, career standards benchmarks, industry-based learning, post-secondary transition to schoolwork and the military, and how do we offer rigorous particular coursework. Now, they kind of rate us on every particular one, so as we go through, as I said, as I print it off, I can drop every one of these boxes down and talk about, okay, we don't want to do that, but let's go here. Okay, so we want to talk about the achievement scores. And this is what the public's going to see. The top row is the PSSAs and the keystones. English language arts, algebra and mathematics, science and biology. We do very well in science and biology. Unfortunately, it's not a federal mandate. It's a state mandate, not a federal mandate. So you can see when you look at it, they have it labeled as the federal indicators. Science doesn't have it. So they talk about a proficiency as a building as a whole. In English language arts as a whole, grades 7 through 12. They talk about a proficient advanced of 69.4. They talk about the state average of 63. Okay? They're telling us right now that we're about 6.4 points above the state average of the school districts in Pennsylvania. Same thing happens with mathematics. Okay? We're just a little bit above the state average by about 2 percentage points in mathematics, and we're about 4.5% over in science and biology. We hit the green, we met our targets, we met the benchmarks for this particular year. We go down below, they talk about then the growth measures. Are our kids growing? 1 year's worth of growth for 1 year's worth of education. We go to English language arts. Our growth score was 79.3. The growth standard was 70. We made it by over 9.3 points. Mathematics, you see it's red. Okay, remember we talked about the color schemes? Okay, we didn't make the standard in mathematics for growth. Why? We were at 63.9. The growth rate was 70. We missed it by 0.7. That to me is probably 3 students. We missed the growth measure by 3. And in science and biology, we're in blue, so we far exceeded the state average and state growth measures because it was 85.5, and we ended up with the 70. So we hit the blue because we far exceeded the growth measure for biology. So that's when they talk about those meeting the annual growth academic expectations. So then they take and they whittle it down even further. And next to every one of those that you see on there, and I will probably point to the ones that look like this, so I won't open every one up. Okay? But they break it down by subgroup. So unlike the Pennsylvania School Performance Profile, where they had one subgroup for historically low performing students, that included your English language learners, that included your special education population, that included your economically disadvantaged, and your special ed population. I don't know if I mentioned that, but they all kind of got lumped into one group. Everybody, if you were in any one of those categories, you got counted once. They undid it. Now they do all the different populations. So if you're an English language learner who happens to be economically disadvantaged, who happens to be in special ed, that one score is going to count against us 3 times in each category. So now they're going to go by the particular subgroups. All the subgroups are, again, economically disadvantaged English language learners, students with disabilities, racial ethnic groups, which are Asian, Black, Hispanic, multiracial, Native American, and Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islanders, and of course the white population. So now we're going to get scored on every one of those. So if I would take, for example, one of those, and I'm not going to go through them all, and I click on the student group breakdown, it's going to break it down for me and how we did in every particular subgroup. All right? So on this particular one, we put up English language arts. We had a score for the all-score group. We were at 79.3, which means we met the standard. And we're also increasing from one year to the next because the green arrow is sitting there. So you can interpret that as we're going up. Okay, the black subgroup is a 74.0. You see we have a green circle. We've met the standard. Okay, and we are basically where we were from the year before. And the same thing goes for the white population. We've exceeded the economically disadvantaged, you see, because we get a blue circle. So we've exceeded the state for that particular subgroup. And then we have the students with disabilities. You see down there we have a red one, which means that particular group didn't get it. We didn't meet the standard for that particular group. So they would do that for every one of our growth measures and every one of our proficiency measures. Now this is where the caveat came in. Okay, at the beginning of the slide that I had, the first one, I got to bring it back up. They are now going back and giving federal designations. All right, and they're based on subgroups. So now every subgroup we're going to get a judge on. So how do they do it? They take and they chart every school in Pennsylvania on the good old Cartesian plane. Who didn't think you were going to get a math lesson today, huh? All right, let's see if I can find it. There it is, right there. And there it is. That's every school in Pennsylvania. Now, if you are in quadrant 3, because they read the quadrants, we have our proficiency, which is your y-axis, and you have your growth rates, which is your x-axis. If you're in quadrant 1, you're a high-achieving, high-growth school. If you're in quadrant 2, you're a high-achieving, low-growth school. If you're in quadrant 3, they consider you to be a low-achieving, low-growth school. And if you're in quadrant 2, you're a high-growth but low-achieving school. They concentrate on the third quadrant. They take the lowest 5% of the schools in Pennsylvania and they circle them as you see. They're going to call those a comprehensive support and intervention schools. The lowest 5%. They're sitting right here. They got to write an improvement plan. They've got to write it between now and the 30th of June. They're going to come together over the next 4 years and say how they're going to improve their deficiencies. That's not us. We're not even there. Where are we? We are probably so close to the origin it isn't funny. If we take the 67% proficiency rates that we had in some and the growth rates, we're probably somewhere around here as a school. Sorry, yeah, I can say we're just about right here.
Okay.
Okay, as a school as a whole.
Quadrant
Quadrant 1, right around the origin.
all I need to know.
We're good. Okay, so then they call those the CSI schools. Then they get involved in something called additional targeted support intervention schools. Now they take every subgroup that I mentioned to you, every one, and treat it as if it was his own school. And now we're going to see, are you in the bottom 5% of their criteria? So, we should go ahead and show you all of them. They're all listed here. But we had some struggles in achievement in 2 categories. Our students with disabilities and our African American subgroup. They were, we had it in both achievement and growth. So if I would plot those, take for example, if I take the students with disabilities, we were at 22.7 and negative 1.9 on the growth and the achievement. So 22 is going to be somewhere around here, and 1.9 is going to be so close to the y-axis, we'd be sitting somewhere around here in the African American subgroup. Excuse me, students with disability subgroup. Are we in that particular circle that we are in the lowest 5%? No, we're not there. So far, so good. Then they talk about the achievement for math and ELA for the African American subgroup. We were at 30.6 and negative 2.8. 30.6, negative 2.8, we're sitting right about here. Do we qualify for additional targeted intervention school? No, we're not part of that circle, we're not part of that, we don't even match the criteria. But here's the bad news. We're going to be credited as being an additional targeted support and intervention school because we have a third category that they found to be problematic, and that was attendance in these two subgroups. So because of that attendance, third qualifier, they're going to say, we're going to put you in as an additional targeted intervention school, and we're going to have to write a plan. Starting probably, we're waiting for the documentation now from the Commonwealth, and due on June 30th, we're going to meet as a team, Dr. Ann and myself, the building principals, and we're going to create a plan of how we're going to take care of the attendance particular problem.
And so what you mean by that, Ed, is that in those two subgroups,
Right.
those children are not coming to school as consistently as the other group.
As the other
They're
groups.
they're
Right.
missing more school days.
Right.
Every category appears to be in the red now. On this sheet, anyway, right? All student groups, black, white, economic.
Yeah, so like I said, so because of the attendance, because of those particular subgroups that were lower in achievement and growth, like that alone would not get us there.
But is this saying that a third of our we're only at 2/3 of where we should be?
Yeah.
In terms of attendance?
And here's how they do it. Here's how they do it. Because now, you're only allowed to miss 10% of the days of school to be considered to be chronically absent. So if you're here for an entire school year, so that you come in on August the 20th and you leave on June 1st, 10% is 18 days. So on that 19th day, you're now considered to be chronically absent.
And that's what that measures.
And that's what that
A
measures.
third of our kids have missed 19 or more days. Is that
To a
right?
degree, yeah,
Okay.
in principle. However, let's say, for example, we get a student who comes in October, and he's here for, say, 108 days. He can only miss 11,
It's 10%.
10%. 90's 9. If they come in let's say, February, he's here for, 60 days. He can only miss 6. Because on the 7th day, he hits the chart.
Do we know if that's more at the elementary level or more at the high school?
I'm only putting up the high school right now because I wanted to keep this brief. But I mean,
Attendance issues at the high school?
no, there's no TSI schools at elementary school. They don't have not any designation whatsoever.
Yes,
They're good.
he was asking, is it
At the high school.
What's that?
He was asking at the high school. He was
Yes,
looking at-
this is strictly for the high school. So
So
they're-
is attendance by day or is it by instruction hours? Okay. So if they miss full days, so
Yes.
they miss.
All right, so this shortfall is largely created because of attendance at the high school.
yes, if it wasn't for basic attendance at the high school, we would not be sitting as an additional target intervention school because of growth or achievement.
So what is roughly a two-thirds, 67.8%, are not chronically late, according to this.
Right, they're not growing, so they're
And
missing.
at the high school, it might actually be like 50% because and I'm making these numbers up, but it's worse at the high school, not as bad at the elementary school. So the numbers at the high school must be even lower than.
No, that's
than
not,
the
that's
average.
not all.
This is
How am I
only
reading
No,
this?
this is only the high school.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm
Yes,
sorry.
this is
Okay,
only the high
school. I missed it.
You know, if you would go to the website, which is for the futurereadypa.com, you would be able to pull up all these things for every other school. I just wanted to be brief. I didn't want to do all 3 schools
No,
because
thank you.
the other buildings don't have the same issues that the high school had for the TSI. Okay,
So the issue, I think we pretty clearly understand the issue. So can we take just a minute or two and maybe hear from the principals as to what their strategies are to address attendance in general and of these two subgroups?
yes, we have the principals that come in today to speak very briefly on what we're going to do in the meantime, because we're going to have till June 30th to put our basic plan together to submit to the superintendent on how we're going to attack these particular issues for these particular subgroups, so we can bring it up and actually get it removed. I had the extra stuff here, but we could talk about that some other time. So we're going to have to create the plan, so I'll go ahead and step away. We'll let Michael and Rachel come up and do their little thing of what we're going to do in the meantime.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right.
So, there are two things I wanted to point out that I think you have to be aware of when they define attendance rates. That is, if you are sick and home and you have medically excused absence, if you have a vacation, any absence from school goes against your attendance rate.
Are you saying even if a youngster is in the hospital for 10 days?
It's against.
Against,
Okay.
That's helpful.
Further, one of the things that just actually struck me as Mr. Mantich was talking, what is the fact that we have a very transient population, a large portion of our students. So these students might come in and miss a few days here, miss a few more days, till they grasp on to the community and the excellence and the character and the core values of what we're promoting and develop a sense of buy-in. So that will be another strategy that we intend to work with our new students to the building on a different day. We tried to break it down in the simplest terms so that we wouldn't get too, we knew Mr. Mantich would do a nice job explaining the X's and the N's, so to speak. So how are schools basically graded? Grades and assessments, discipline, attendance, and graduation rate. Those are some general rules of thumb if you talk to someone and they're talking about schools. But more importantly, that's how we use as a filter to first get to know students in the building. We'll look at their grades, their discipline, and their attendance anytime we're striking up a conversation with them. With those three things in mind, we always have the student at the center of our focus. We're focusing on the environment of the building, the curriculum and instruction, and also systems of support for our students. Because we believe if a student comes to school and they enjoy the environment that they're in, they're going to come to school more often. We've done a number of things for the environment, such as the shop, the CCC, the furniture, the opportunities and the partnerships that we've had, the inclusive atmosphere that we're promoting through the special education, which is a touch on the other subgroup as well, student mentors, and district-wide improvements for safety and security of the students while they're here. In addition, the junior high, I really want to commend Mrs. Gattuso for the efforts that she's led the team with the junior high, with the PBIS. If you walk around upstairs, which I would encourage you to do, there's shout-out boards celebrating kids' successes here at the building. There's in the cafeteria, I think I mentioned that the last time, there's a systematic approach to promoting the things that we value. There is how do you exhibit good character, how do you exude excellence, and how do we celebrate as a community together. And the junior high team has really led the way in that this year, so that we're hoping that this carries on and catches on with the high school. In terms of professional development and curriculum and instruction, back one. I have to applaud the teachers for their courage in changing their approach and trying to develop more innovative ways in which to engage the students. Our goal is always to engage the students, to make them interested, make them want to be here. The efforts of Mr. Javaden and Mrs. Steiner as professional development coaches have created changes in the classroom that I wish that I had as an opportunity as I was a student. These are all specific strategies to try to bring them to school on a more regular basis because they want to come to school. In addition, the curricular improvements that Mr. Mantich has led, especially with science, you saw that the 85.9, I think it was, almost 15% above the state average. These are things that are evidence that the approach is working. In addition, the math extension to the 8th grade rotation, and also not abandoning what we started 5 years ago with the Penn Literacy Network, which is really using the curriculum and incorporating a social aspect of learning in the instruction. Finally, the continued professional development of the teachers evidences the PBIS team, the safety team, the dynamic learning project team. All of these groups are working harmoniously now and have the same mission, which is to engage the student. And if the student is engaged, then he or she is going to show up. Finally, we have a number of systems of support in the building, which I'm extremely proud of, particularly the SAP team. 2012-13, there were 12 or 13 referrals for the entire year, and a referral to SAP is made if the student has a barrier to learning. And one of those barriers, historically, was attendance. So now I think the number is, I think there were around 80 students for the year so far. And what we've elected to do is to celebrate our strength, which is the relationships that the teachers have with the children, and develop a system of mentoring. We have expanded the number of teachers that are SAP trained through UPMC. Those teachers meet once a week on Wednesday. And all the students that are referred, there are different tiers of supports that are provided. One, at the first level, is a check-in with the teacher. The second level, if it's more, if the student's needs are greater than what we can provide, then our outside services of Wesley Spectrum and our school-based therapists step in. We have this therapist that comes on Fridays about twice a month. We also have this therapist for students with IEPs. So I want to thank the work that Dr. Andler has continued and really supported the efforts, because it makes the students have a place where they can have a point of contact. Further, we have instituted the credit recovery through Apex Learning and Project Succeed for students that might still struggle. This shifting a little bit to talking about academic success, but many times where there's a parallel with attendance and academic success. If you're not here, we can't teach you. So that's why we elected to put that there. Continuing our professional development and our relationships with the courts and DHS, and also the extended study, which I want to thank the board for providing for our students with the shop, after school, the Cougar Den, and Study Zone. These three entities draw in different populations of kids. The Study Zone is particularly for student athletes. We have a pretty high participation rate all the way up from 7th all the way up through 12th grade. The Cougar Den is if you're having academic difficulty in one of the core subject areas, one day of the week, you can get extended help in that subject. And the shop is exciting because there are more students that are embracing that. In addition, the coaching that's been provided, there are more instances where teachers are connecting the resources that are in the shop now and putting them into their curriculum and into their lessons. And I saved the truancy prevention as the last because this is somewhat of a reactive approach. So if all of these things don't work, what do we do? So every day if a student misses class, Mrs. McDonough calls home. After a couple of absences, a letter is sent home after 3 absences. And then the 4th absence, we set up a truancy elimination plan. I mixed up the acronyms.
Student attendance improvement plan meeting.
Thank you. And from there, we have a plan that's put in place. The parent comes in and we meet with the student. And if that doesn't work, we also have a relationship with the magistrate, Judge Kabistik. But our whole focus has to remain on the student. And it has to be focused on finding out what that student's passion is and how they can go after that and live it out in the building. And that's pretty much our approach in a nutshell, but I know I left out about 1,000 things, so.
But the thing, Mr. Logren, that I think the board needs to hear, and I want to hear it too. So we receive test data returned from the state that says there's 2 subgroups essentially not coming to school. So in the immediacy, Johnny misses or Susie misses day 1, day 2, and that's kind of what this is about. In other words, you're aware that they were not in school day 1 or day 2, and there are personal contacts at the home?
Yes, sir.
And at some point, then parents and student have to come in to discuss the absenteeism.
Yes, sir.
Is that working?
Yeah, we are still reviewing this. It's about the first full year of that truancy elimination plan. It was developed about mid-year last year, you'd
Correct.
say? Right.
New
So-
protocols, new.
Right. The law changed last year or at the end of
I believe it was 2 years ago.
2 years ago for truancy prevention. And so we continue to look at the data of the students that are missing and the reasons why they're missing. And as I said in the beginning, many times we're finding out, I don't know what the number is of this number of students that are new to the district, that have just moved to the district, that also have truancy issues, and how that affects our score. I'd have to defer to Mr. Manthich, because their number of days missed is less than the larger group.
So they don't bring their absences with them. In other words, if we get them for, say, 2/3 of a year, they're only eligible to miss 2/3 of the number. What is it, 18?
I assume that, how does
In
that
other
work?
words, no, when we get them here, for us, when we get them here on a certain day, we count the number of days they are concurrently enrolled in our building.
Right.
And then they take the 10%
Gotcha.
from that.
Okay.
So if they're here 90 days, they get 9.
Yeah,
You know, 180 days, they get 18.
right.
So
And I
they don't,
assume,
and their absences from the other building doesn't transfer to us either.
Okay, that's what I meant.
Inherit their-
Yeah, we don't inherit their attendance at all.
I assume there's no opportunity for us to make up a day that's missed. For us to put in any kind of program where you miss a day, you missed a day.
And the caveat too is,
For the-
you know, we used to be able to take students like you wanted to take on a college visit, okay? That's still considered to be an absent before they didn't really,
Absence is absence.
yeah, if you're not accompanied by a
I guess-
teacher.
That's what I wanted
Yeah.
to understand. I think this is all great, these interventions and things that you're targeting these different realms. But what's unclear to me is if that analysis was done, if an absence is an absence, we can differentiate out students that are missing because of a game, because of a gate activity, because they're going to college, versus the ones that are chronically missing. I mean, if you look at this data, I mean, it is correlational, and it makes sense, you're missing instruction. These two groups, they're historically at risk. And one of the things I didn't say up there that I think is a big problem is, they want to come to school, but these two groups, these are the ones that have no support at home. But you can, so the problem is, a lot of times, they're not waking up on time, they're up late, there's no one in the house that's saying go to school, or you're late, let me bring you to school. That's why the other groups with higher income and the white groups in higher education, they're found, like if Eric's late, he missed his bus, I'll turn around, bring him back up, and then go to work. But these kids don't, and the problem with the high school, junior high is it's inaccessible, whether by walking or public transportation. So if you want to help those groups, I think it's that system of supports. That's what I was gonna ask, do you have extended programs after school? Do we provide transportation after that?
We have a contract with the bus service which runs till 4 o'clock, and thankfully, we have the bus stay until 3:15, and then it makes its run.
Okay, so it's great, so they can be part of those things, but like the thing to bring them to school so they're not absent, I don't know, it's probably too costly to do like a second run, because that's just like a very, you know what I mean, like, it's just a practical thing, like why they're missing, like they may be wanting to come in all this and they wake up and they're like, well crap, I have no way to get to school.
And
Correct.
Dr. Mendoza, you make a great point that a lot of these students that are missing, and the ones that we specifically look to address and that are part of the student attendance improvement plans are the students who have excessive unexcused absences. So when Bethany Mudd and myself or Mr. Locker hold these student attendance improvement plans, those are the questions that we ask. What do you feel your reason for not coming to school or coming to school on time is, and what does your family think the reason for not coming to
And
school?
what do they say?
So some of them are, I'm staying up too late to watch YouTube, watch YouTube videos, or mom has to work at 6 or 7 o'clock. It has to be at work at 6 o'clock in the
Right.
morning, and so their alarm goes off and nobody else wakes them up, and they miss the bus and they have no
Because that's
way
my
to get there.
panic is I leave before the kids, so I have to wake Charlie, who goes to Crafton, I wake him up at 5:30 to get in the shower so you're awake before I leave the house, because I can't have you fall asleep and no one's gonna bring you to school.
So one of the things that we highly encourage, there's a partnership that we have with a countywide agency called Focus on Attendance. And Focus on Attendance is kind of like the umbrella of resources available from the county that can assist with attendance issues. One of those is YAP. And they can provide things such as going to a house in the morning if a student doesn't wake up and actually physically picking the student up and bringing them here. Now, parents can deny that service, but then when we have to take them to court because they continue to
So is
miss.
that something we have then?
Yes.
set up?
Yes.
They have YAP mentors as well.
Yep.
Uh,
But once
Yeah.
they're identified and they're in that improvement plan, attendance improvement plan.
What's our success rate with the attendance improvement plan?
No, I'm saying only once they're in that improvement plan
Yes,
do
ma'am.
those things kick in.
So
Because
it's
like
not-
how
it's
many
not
days
preventative.
before, how many days do they have to miss
Yes,
before they're referred into the improvement plan?
They're supposed to make an appointment after the first letter is sent, which is 4 absences.
Okay, but then when it actually, they do get rolling in the plan, how many more did they miss?
It depends upon the rate of return that you get on the call. Sometimes you'll call and you won't get a call back. Sometimes you might call and you
Well,
might get
that's what I'm
somebody to
saying,
call
like,
back.
is that maybe what some of the aggressiveness is to kind of cut off some of those excess days that are counting into our statistics? I think that's all great and stuff, and I think they want to come, but I think there's just basic issues in these at-risk groups that they don't have the supports to try and get.
So that's a large, one of the things that I'm most proud about that everyone seems to gel towards is providing the supports that are here in the building. And we'll continue to work to try to figure out ways, and I think one of the things is more community outreach, developing ways through that, and I think I want to applaud the Carlynton Education Foundation. Is something that was just created within the last 3 or 4 years, because that is a celebration of the community, and the stronger and the bigger things like that get, the more excited people get about education, and the more it can only increase the likelihood that a child will come to school.
What counts as a day missed? In other words, if you come to school at 1:30,
1:30?
yeah, that's not gonna
That's a
count.
day.
Okay, what count, when do you have to be here, by fifth
I
period?
believe-
It's
Not a day by
10:50. 10:50.
10:50.
After 10:50, it is considered a full day absence.
And this,
Half days out of the full days?
I don't know, that'd be through half
If
day.
you're tardy, you're still here, you're not counted as an absent,
You're tardy
so,
till 10:50.
yeah, and then after that,
Actually, at 9:20, I believe, is actually considered a half-day absence, according to our handbook. So a half-day absence at 9:20, a full-day absence at 10:50.
and the 10% counts both excused and unexcused. The data that we have, would we be able to look at what that breakdown is? In other words, do we have a lot of, do the excused absences by and large have no effect on this? Or are we finding there are students who have enough excused and unexcused that they go over that?
Well,
Follow my
yes, the law states that,
I know they, yeah, but I'm trying to understand what's, if you've got some students that are doing a lot of college tours and they're doing a lot of other things, and they go over, maybe that's one thing, but do you have some?
shows the law states that the student is allowed to miss 10 days for any reason. After,
But not for,
but there's 10 days. After 10 days, you have to have a medical excuse. So the question that you ask is, the kids that are missing with excused absences are pretty much following the point. They're not hurting the,
we have the data, we could actually look at that, could we not, or have we?
I think you can, I think you can look, I don't know if we have, that's what I was asking about the analysis.
We'd have to pull in.
Right, so you can look at the
if there was
student.
excused versus unexcused absences.
So you can break that down,
Right.
and then you can even look at.
You know, just to kind of,
What's the nature of,
Yeah,
of
we're-
all this?
we're-
Just
yeah.
simply saying somebody's
It's a nerdy
missing one.
analysis, do it.
but basically what we're going to do from, as soon as we get the documents from PDE, is we're going to sit down as a collaborative team and we're going to have these conversations. And we're going to come up with a plan that we're going to be presenting to the superintendent that says, here's what we plan to do in the school year to help to target these two subgroups and what we're going to do to try to bring these numbers up. And there's going to be a comprehensive plan that you're going to look at, and then we're going to monitor it, how it goes.
What is the impact on the district of these scores, other than it's a score? In other words, are these scores then used to make some determination in terms of our subsidy levels, or some other thing? Is it just a score, just telling us how we're doing, or does it have some real impact?
Exactly, and if I would go back to the website, you're going to see a little banner right next to our name that says you are an additional targeted support and intervention school.
Right.
So if anybody would see that and say, what does that mean? My point of coming in here today was if anybody would approach you from the community and say, hey, I looked on the website, you're a targeted improvement school, what does that mean and how did you get there? My goal today was to show you what it means and how we got there and what our plan is to move forward. So you have the ability now to understand what
What's
it
the
is.
consequence of being a targeted school? Could we be that forever and nothing happens? Could we be a school that
No,
gets
they're
shut
gonna
down or
they're
gets
gonna
less
review this
funding?
4 years from now. There are exit strategies.
Right,
for
I
which
mean,
we
I
can have,
understand
right.
that, but I mean, like, what does that do? Does it hurt the district? Is it
Does it
just
just-
the label?
No. Now, if we were a CSI school, if we were one of the bottom 5%, then the state's gonna come here, and they're gonna sit down with us, and they're gonna help us write a 4-year plan that the state's gonna have to approve, and they're gonna provide subsidies to help us get there.
Okay.
That's not us, you know? Like I said, if we didn't have that third bullet point of attendance, growth and achievement in academics, we're not even having this conversation. But because of that third bullet point, they're going to say, we want to take a look at this, get a plan in place, solve this particular problem, and then they'll leave us pretty much alone after that.
Okay.
So that's our next step. Our next step is to present a plan, build it between now and June, present it to the superintendent, get his approval, and then enact it in the next year.
How long does that rating last? Is it for 4 years, or
Yeah.
if we get out of it within 2 years, or 1 year, we're no longer labeled that way, or is it a 4-year?
They usually say for 4 years. But when I was reading through, and I wanted to cut short today, and not, get there, but, what they talk about,
This is the short version.
yeah.
I have different
Well, mine was a
definitions
short
of
version, I'm not taking credit for anything other than that. But, I did have some steps that say, how do we demonstrate during the next 4-year span? At a minimum, it says show continued progress at least in academic achievement indicators. We've already done that, that's not our problem. Exceed the identification standards for the ATSI scores that are applied for this year. So as long as we get above those particular levels of that third one, then we don't have to worry about it any longer. So just as long as we write the plan works, we jump over, we can continue to move forward from there. And that's gonna be our goal from this point forward.
so thank you for listening to this.
Okay, thank you very much. And I think it's important, the most important point for the board to hear is that overall, we've done very well. We have some targeted groups that we're very concerned about. And Mr. Logren, you and Mrs. Cattuso did a nice job of saying, one, there's plenty of good things to do when you're in school. We have a very caring and committed staff. And also getting down to, with children individually, that question about why aren't you in school? What's the difficulty? That gives you very valuable information in addressing student attendance. So, very, very good.
Thank you.
If I could make a quick comment. So, Mike and Rachel, we've seen a steady stream of great programs and great news and things that you folks have implemented over the last couple of years. And at least me personally, I've been amazed at the programs you put in place. I mean, across the whole district, but especially here at the high school. So, to me, the attendance thing's a surprise. I'm sure it was a surprise to you as well. It's not for lack of effort that we're seeing these numbers. So, one thing is I don't personally take it as bad in that we're not trying to do the right thing. So, I don't think we have any bad marks there. But because we have this rating, it does beg. I think David and Maurice, you guys had good questions, and maybe it's worth, I know this could take time, but maybe it's worth digging down to the student level and saying, of this rating, what is every single student's absence? Is it excused? Is it unexcused? Is it sickness? Is it, and be able to put a picture together and say, here's the cause of, here's what we think the cause is of this rating. And then you can put a plan together and tell the state what you're gonna do. But until you can dig down to that.
Most of those are unexcused.
Okay. And then, in the unexcused, is it, I mean, I think you've seen some groups are worse than others, but all of the groups are bad, and I think it's surprising to me. I think most of your students are here, they miss 3 or 4 or 5 days a year, and that's it. So,
I don't
is
even
there
know if
some-
you need to like look down to every student. I mean, can't you put in the search field like X amount percentage of absences and pull up that student population and then look at excused, unexcused?
Anybody over 5 or whatever the number is.
Because like if you're making an intervention, like you have to define that population for that intervention. So it's like you have all these different things, but some things might be better for some students versus some it's like it's just a practical thing. For some it's like, I just hate school, nobody at school cares about me, and then that would be a different group and a different intervention.
Yeah, and also keep in mind too, that when we talked about this particular data, we might be talking about drawing down to one student, he might be in both categories. So you're talking about maybe a handful of students who qualify for both that's causing us the most grief. And can we
So
drill
they
down to
double
who
count
those?
them in these statistics?
Yes,
Ah,
yes,
that is
yes,
terrible.
yes.
But, just one student instead of 2. that you
Right,
can
so
do
you
an
say we
intervention
drill
to.
down to that level,
Yeah.
yeah, we could say, well, yes, God, this counts for both, and we might be talking about maybe 50 students or 60 students.
And that's part of the analysis. Maybe
Yes.
the problem, maybe the numbers are showing a problem that's much bigger than actually happens. And we might, I'm not saying this is kid, but you might recommend to us that it's not really a problem. There's 6 kids that are causing this.
The stragglers.
Right.
It's-
We're among the stragglers.
And high school is 9 through 12?
No,
No,
7 to
7 to
12.
So this is
7
the
through
Junior,
12
senior.
buildings.
junior,
High
senior
school.
in high school, okay.
I'd be interested also to see, the shop has a lot of attendance for junior high students. And we've been tracking the kids that come into the shop in the morning when they sign in. So it'll be interesting to do a cross-reference of the kids that come in the shop and look at their attendance rates. So I think it's also important to celebrate the things that are working and use that tool to attract other students that might not be as comfortable.
I was gonna say, so rough numbers, if we say on average 100 a class, just for purposes of this hypothetical, 600 students, the difference between the statewide averages and what we need to be at to get green, and our actual numbers, maybe 20%. So we're saying that's 120 students that we need out of 600 to get 120.
It could be less, because they're double counting.
Well, but I mean, that's the scope of what needs to be addressed. If we're not gonna be labeled.
And let me just say this, if this is kind of closing it, and I think it goes without saying, but it deserves, I think, mentioning it again. Even though those 2 subgroups were identified, we have many wonderful, conscientious, high-achieving students in both of those groups with very committed families to work. So it's when you have a smaller district, it's easier to be thrown off. Just when we're doing PSSA, sometimes in smaller districts I've been in, if 10 kids don't take the test, that could have a major impact on your school.
Wasn't it 6 students?
Yeah.
That
I mean,
changed
I
their
try to break
number?
down. Just to give you an idea of what we're talking about, if we take like the junior, senior high school, and we have about a 16% African-American population, just to make the numbers easy, say 20. So we have 600 in a class, we're talking about 20% of those, which is 120. 57% of them are coming to school, so what are we talking about? We're talking about 50, 55, 56 kids that we probably should be targeting in that subgroup, find out who they are and what we need to do to get them here. That's kind of where, when we start this plan, that's kind of where my vision, this plan's gonna go.
And I think that Mike,
So less
Mike,
than
when
10
we
grades.
said.
Huh?
So less than 10 a grade.
Yeah,
Pretty much.
yeah.
So.
Well, it's not necessarily, that's what, be careful, and I think that that's what you're alluding to too. Be careful when we're using the group, because it's not like all kids with disabilities or all
No.
African American.
That's
It's just
right.
in that group,
In-
they're causing the highest
Right.
amounts of absenteeism.
And of those, say, 60 kids,
Mhm,
they could be part of both groups.
mhm.
So out of the 600 people at high school, we might be talking about 70, 80 kids total.
Right, so, and I guess that is
Yeah.
why David and I were saying drilling down to the
Yes,
student
exactly.
level and looking at the variables and really identifying who are these kids. Not to blame them, not to put them out in front and
We
say,
have to
like,
do things
you
to
are
help them.
causing a label on our school. That would be terrible.
No, we have to find a way of helping this kid.
Yeah,
Because
right.
like Mike's point is,
And-
if we get them here, we can educate them. And we can see once they're here, what we're doing with them.
And that's what I'm saying, like, I'm very impressed at all these different services, programs, efforts you're putting in. I want to make sure it reaches those kids that need it, but we have to identify which of those kids are the ones that need it, instead of just applying it broadly, and then you guys only have so much time in a day.
So that's our quest, from now on to 30th of June.
You're on quest.
Okay. President? What's that?
Moving along in our meeting, I'll entertain a motion to approve 3 different sets of minutes from previous meetings. I'll entertain a motion to approve number 1, the minutes of the December 4th, 2018 reorganization meeting. Number 2, the minutes of the December 4th, 2018 regular voting meeting. And number 3, the minutes of the January 8th, 2019 finance committee meeting. Do I have a motion for those 3 items?
So moved.
So moved, do I have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded, any discussion? If not, we'll vote. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. I'll report that we had an executive session after our January 8th Finance Committee meeting, where we discussed personnel matters and real estate. And we also had an executive session prior to this meeting where we discussed personnel matters, real estate, and contracts.
Negotiations,
And
contract negotiations.
negotiations. I'll now turn to Dr. DePeria for the administrative reports.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. President. Would like to mention through the Pennsylvania School Boards Association, this is School Directors Recognition Month, and that's for the month of January. And at each director's place at the table, there is a certificate honoring your school's service to the Carlynton School District and to the public school system in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And let me just say 2 things. It was one of the things mentioned in the criteria. Pennsylvania is one of the few states where school directors are not paid for their service. So it truly is public service when school districts work as directors for a school district. Here at Carlynton, I've had the great privilege of serving this district 3 times. The board members, I think, are absolutely outstanding, dedicated to what you do, and a good example of that this evening was your insightful questions and your seriousness about promoting good student achievement and success. So we want to personally thank you for your service. You do have this wonderful certificate honoring your service, and again, thank you so much. We really appreciate it, and this board in particular, we could not do this without you. So again, thanks. I should say that concludes my report. Sorry about that.
Do you want Chris to jump in on the finance?
Yes, Chris, would you please, because we did add.
Yeah, and I'll run through brief because we had the finance committee on last week. And
we're getting into the preliminary proposed budget, which we'll make a motion on tonight. From last week, we had an impact on the budgetary reserve of 1.566 million. We just wanted to take you through the steps real quickly. As I said, it's a step-by-step process. Went through the general education categories. We were able to knock about 26K out of that. Just in the general education budget, I expect us to be around 14K less based on the historical cost of health benefits, but at the moment, as I said, Allegheny County Health Consortium tells you to go 3 until they give you the actual number. I'm hoping for that in February, March, I believe that's when it came last year. We had 9 employees come off healthcare retirees, so that's around 100,000. I said in this, I didn't have the number calculated. Did the number the other day. It was at about 100,000 when that was all said and done. So full disclosure, there could be, if there are more retirees, that's numbers that go back into the budget for the time being though. That's 9 people off because some people have spouses still on it. So the district within the contracts pay for the spouses, they pay for single. So that could be anywhere from the $6,000 contract district up to $18,000, $20,000. So those 9 employees coming off, so huge savings. We're also this week meeting with the principals, curriculum director on their budgets to determine any additional savings for their supplies, books, whatever we can get. So I'm sure they're all looking forward to that. And then Parkway sent an estimate for their total. Right now, based on last year, we had about $400,000 with their roof project and student tuition. They sent in their estimate with our with us paying into the agreement 25, student tuition about $355K. This takes us down about 19 more, and we're going to continue knocking out and giving the board updates each week on where we're at. That puts us at about $1.4 million dipping into the fund balance at this moment, but we're going to continue to work through that, research everything, work together as a team. So that gives us, with the preliminary of 1.405 million, expenses at 29.9. I think, David, at one point you said, let's get it to about 30 and work back from there. So we keep working that down.
And not that that should be any, that was just sort of a general
That was a start.
target. It sort of seemed,
In that,
because even with bringing it down to 1.4 million, we
we have a lower.
started the year with a $2.6 million fund balance. That'd bring us down to 1.2, and if we can using more than half of it in just 1 year, and we're hoping it's going to get reduced, but
Right.
There's still
A lot of work,
to be
a
done.
lot of work. And then we're at 28.577 in the revenue area. There are not many adjustments made to that yet, but as I said, we'll work through that as numbers come in, and hopefully that will kind of knock that down a little bit. So hopefully that was brief, and thank everybody for their service since it is Board Appreciation Month.
Chris, you're talking about, not Parkway, but the roof up for Pathfinder. That is going to hit the current year budget, though, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, I just want.
Yes, that will hit the 1920.
That's going to be done this year.
1920.
Oh, so it'll be
It's
next.
not this year, it's not 1819, it will be in the 1920
Okay, so
budget.
and that's in this budget?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, that is in that budget, so.
Did you budget in raises for the board, for the school board Parkway?
Yes, 100% of what it was.
We're gonna double what we get. Appreciation month.
You're the cheapest raise we ever get.
And well, the principals, I think, basically took their time when we wanted to share the board with our test data and our responses to that data.
We have the elementary principals.
Yes, I know we do, but since this took so much time, I thought we'd defer them until our next board meeting.
Sure. Joe wants cake.
So if you're sure, we'll move on to committee reports. So Director Apple, any thoughts or news on Parkway?
Yeah, well, the Parkway meeting was last Tuesday, which, because of the holiday, I could not attend it, because they moved it to last Tuesday when we have our meeting. But I did get a see if I can find it. I got the report from Parkway, and each month they choose a morning and an afternoon student of the month. And the December AM student of the month was Kira Lindsay, who's a first-year student in the Culinary Arts program at Parkway West, and a sophomore at Carlynton High School. This is a nice write-up, so I just thought I'd share it for our record. But in her free time, she enjoys reading and spending time with her younger sisters, as well as volunteering at Manor Care and Green Tree. After graduation, Kira plans on going to college to further her culinary arts skills, in addition to learning business, so that she can operate her own restaurant one day, which is a really great example of the fact that Parkway kids don't stop their education typically and go right to work. I mean, that happens, but I think the vast majority of them get post-secondary training or college, that sort of thing. So they're bright kids and they're achievers, and it's nice that Kira was recognized.
Good. Thank you.
That's it, that's all.
Okay, thank you, that's good news. Director Honchar is not able to be here tonight, so we'll ask him for an update next time, but I believe the roof was the big topic at Pathfinder, so we'll get it for you.
I am going to attend the Pathfinder meeting
Will you?
tomorrow in Jersey.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Okay. And then we'll look forward to hearing an update from you at the February meeting. Director Frank, anything on Shaston?
No update, our next meeting is this Thursday, so I'll have an update on next
Awesome.
meeting.
Okay, thank you. And then Director Simzik.
I don't have anything tonight.
Okay.
Sorry.
It's all right, it's all right. Moving on to the next section of our meeting, then, under the miscellaneous section, we have one item. I'll entertain a motion to approve the additions to the 2018-2019 conference and field trip requests. Do I have a motion for that item?
So moved.
Moved, do I have a second?
Second.
Moved and second, any discussion? If not, we'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Section 2, finance, there are 7 items. I'll entertain a motion to approve the following. Number 1, the November 2018 bills in the amount of $840,630.72. Number 2, the December 2018 bills in the amount of $414,431.97. Number 3, the treasurer's report for the month ending October 31st, 2018. Number 4, the resolution to approve continued membership in the Joint Purchasing Board for the 2019-2020 school year, along with the Allegheny Intermediate Unit and other local school districts, which will empower the district to make bulk purchases of selected items for its use. It is further recommended the appropriate Carlynton School District officials be authorized to sign the joint purchasing agreement, and that Christopher Juswick be named said representative to the purchasing board, and the superintendent be named as alternate. That is finance item number 0119-01. The athletic fund report for the month ending November 30th, 2018, with an ending balance of $14,399.30. Number 6, the activities fund report for the month, the activities fund report for the month ending November 30th, 2018, with an ending balance of $75,198.08. And finally, the continuation of the district's real estate tax assessment appeals program by the solicitor's office for the 2019 tax year as presented. Do I have a motion for those 7 items under finance?
So moved.
Moved, do I have a second?
Second.
Moved and second, any discussion?
I have a question with regard to number 7, the district's real estate tax assessment appeals program. Bill, do we have a threshold, and what is it?
We do, and I don't know it off the top of my head. Generally, it's about 15,000 for most of the districts, where the sale price is recorded on the deed exceeds the assessed value.
By 15,000 or more.
Or more.
They're mostly set at 85% of the sale value, and then it's minus 20,000, I think was the
So
threshold
20.
they get. Yes.
They vary, a couple dollars from district to district. And also keep in mind, that you have a common level ratio, which is about 85%, 87.4 or something like that. So we take that into account in judging the spread. It's been profitable.
When was the county's last assessment? Was that
The
14?
countywide 12,
12? Okay.
and
have
it's
you heard-
still not anywhere near.
Is there another one in the
Not until a industrious taxpayer
Okay.
decides to
Okay.
sue again, so.
Thank you.
Actually, that's not completely true. If that common level ratio dips below 85%, statutorily, that's supposed to trigger a countywide reassessment.
Is that what triggered the last one?
No, it was a suit.
Okay, because there was one even before that.
About that, I'm not saying when I started, but 1973.
Oh, no, I mean, wasn't there one,
Wasn't it 07?
something like that, and then more recently?
Well, there were several right before the 12, yeah, and then they didn't get them right. And,
Okay, that's what was that, okay.
and they still don't have them right, but that's why the program is a necessary evil, if you will, because the assessments, particularly in the commercial, aren't anywhere near market value, nor the residentials, to be honest with you, so.
Thank you.
Any other questions about those 7 items? If not, we'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Under section 3 personnel, we have 12 items. I'll entertain a motion to approve the following. Number 1, the additions to the 2018-2019 supplemental athletic list, revised. Number 2, the leaves of absence request for employees CFT 1819-11 and CFT 1819-12. Number 3, the reassignment of Christine Foley to the position of Class 3 Instructional Aid ESL Support at Carnegie Elementary, retroactive to November 16th, 2018. Number 4, the reassignment of Lindsay Papenchak Davis to the Class 4 position of Lunchroom Playground Aide at Crafton Elementary, retroactive to December 5th, 2018. Number 5, the appointment of Laura Signarowitz, I apologize, to the Class 4 position of Lunchroom Playground Aide at Carnegie Elementary, retroactive to December 6th, 2018. Independent contractor Derek Warderich to perform the duties of STEAM facilitator at Crafton Elementary as presented, pending receipt of clearances at a stipend of $30 per hour, not to exceed 133 hours. Compensation is funded by a Pittsburgh Foundation grant. Personnel number 11906. Number 7, the resignation of high school cafeteria worker Pamela Stewart, effective December 14th, 2018. Number 8, the proposal for the Carlynton Academic Summer Program to be held at Carnegie Elementary School, June 10th through July 3rd, 2019, from 8 a.m. to 12 noon, and to offer support in reading, writing, and math. Number 9, the elimination of the position of Director of Technology, effective January 31st, 2019. Number 10, the creation of the administrative position of Supervisor of Information Technology, effective February 1st, 2019. Number 11, the letter of resignation submitted by long-term art teacher Alexis Kozlowski, effective January 24th, 2019. And number 12, the 2018-2019 curriculum supplemental list as presented. Do I have a motion for those 12 items?
So moved.
Moved, do I have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded, any discussion?
I think it's long-term.
If not, we'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. And to the current Director of Technology, sir, we appreciate your service to the district, the help you provided, and appreciate everything you've done. Thank you. Under section 4, policy, I'll entertain a motion to approve 2 items. Number 1, the second and final reading of finances policy number 611 through 626 per the full PSBA policy review. And number 2, the first reading of policy 246, school wellness, with administrative revisions as presented per the full PSBA policy review. Do I have a motion for those 2 items?
So moved.
Moved, do I have a second?
Second.
Moved and second, any discussion?
In terms of procedurally how this is all done, with a final reading, are we then approving the policy? So that is, number 1 is actually approving this as our new policy 5.
That's correct.
Okay. I'm wondering if maybe the wording shouldn't actually use the word approve or something to make it clear.
Well, you're approving the first reading on number 2 and the second. They're both approvals. So I think that it
Right.
is,
But I
it's
mean,
correctly stated.
after a first reading, the policy doesn't change.
It may. It's the purpose for having it, a
Right.
second reading. People could come back and amend it on the second reading. So it
Right,
could
but
change.
after the first reading, we don't have a new,
It's not adopted.
it's not adopted, that's the word.
It's not adopted, it's approved.
Okay,
So
so,
then on item
so-
1, we are adopting it.
you see what I'm saying? If we're actually at the point now where we're gonna adopt that,
Should we
should
word
we
it
use
so
the
that-
word adopted?
There you go, that.
Well, you certainly could do it in two motions and make
Or-
number 2 approved and number 1 adopt. I think you're putting form over substance, but if you want to be correct, completely, you could do it that way. You could do it two different motions.
Oh, I'm just, maybe I'm misreading this, a misunderstanding. But would one, motion to adopt following the second and final reading? I mean, is that in essence what we're saying?
I think Dan's point is by having it read a second time and approving it, it is by nature adopted. Is that what
Is that what?
But, I mean, look, there's no problem rather than this discussion,
Yeah.
it would be easier,
I'm
quite
just saying-
frankly, to go back and take this motion off, do number 1 as adopt and approve, and do number 2 as approved.
And it
And
is
it'd be
done,
done.
yeah, and it is done that way, some way,
We
by
end up in the same
implication.
place, but.
Yeah, I'm just thinking,
Just for clarity for the
to
public.
look to
I-
amend it to the later date,
Yeah.
to see that adopted.
All of them, Bill, all of them.
David's point is valid, and if Chris and Leanne would agree to withdraw their motion, we could do it in two motions. and-
Force their
I
hand.
would
I take it back.
You won. We don't
No,
need to discuss it any further.
No, but David, it is an appropriate clarification, but it is, as the solicitor says, it does go with that. But generally, the second reading means that it's now ready for final approval or adoption by the board, no question.
So number one, then with your motion to adopt and approve.
That's right.
I move to amend the motion, so number one
Well, they've
reads.
withdrawn the motion. There's no motion on
There's
the
no motion.
table.
Okay,
We can make a new motion.
Okay.
Restraining my reading of Robert's rules here, Mr.
so the number one to read, to adopt following the second final
Adopt
reading.
and approve.
Following the
Adopt
second
and
final reading. So moved, Leanne,
So moved.
and seconded, Jude?
He won't do it, he's not gonna do it.
I'll second it.
Is that,
Any questions about those two motions that we have to adopt and approve the finance policy 611 through 626 and the first reading of policy 246?
Okay, no, wait. Just so if we're gonna be, we're down to this.
I'm not
We're only
concerned.
making a motion on number one because we're not adopting the
Yes.
first reading of
Yes.
policy
Yes.
246.
Yes,
So
that's right.
as I read the motion, I understand the motion, it's to adopt and approve. Only number one.
right.
And read number 2.
Well, we're gonna do that as a
That's a whole
separate
separate
motion.
motion.
We're gonna approve then the first reading of policy 246.
We can't do it under one motion.
Well,
Well, two items, yes.
You can't,
I
there's
mean,
two
it is
items.
number
Yes.
2.
Yes.
Is
Yes.
that what you're saying?
That's-
Yeah,
yeah.
no, that's
The
right.
reason that I'm suggesting to do it is two. The way we set up is, at the top, we've got motion to approve the following. We're gonna amend that to adopt and approve. I'd pass that one first to be completely transparent.
Understood.
Then I would go to number two and simply do to approve.
That sounds great.
Thank you.
So we all remove any motions on the table and we'll start from scratch.
No, we have a motion for number one.
Okay.
I don't know if Leanne or Chris made it, but seconded by David.
Okay. So any questions about the motion on the table to adopt and approve finance policy 611 through 626?
What are we voting on?
Hearing none,
Number one.
all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
We'll do a second motion to approve the first reading of policy 246 as written.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the first reading of policies 246, school wellness with administrative revisions as presented per the full PSBA policy review.
So moved.
Thank you very much. Do I have a second? Second. Thank you very much. Any discussion? David?
None. None whatsoever.
Jeff? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Old business. Anyone have any old business they would like to bring up, discuss? If not, new business. Anyone have any new business they would like to bring up, discuss? Yes.
Ellen is in kindergarten.
Excellent.
I move to approve the 2019-2020 preliminary proposed budget in the amount of $29,982,373.46 with the intent to request approval from the Pennsylvania Department of Education for a referendum exception up to the maximum permitted by law. The board secretary will give public notice of this action through publication in the newspaper.
Thank you. Do we have a second for that?
Michelle, will you need that?
I second that.
Thank you,
Oh,
Jim.
okay.
Any questions or conversations around the motion?
I just would like to reiterate that I don't think any of us expect that we'll ultimately be using that much fund balance in the final budget. I mean, this is preliminary, it's preliminary for a reason.
And
I don't generally jump in, but this is strictly to be in statutory compliance with Act 1.
We don't yet know what the state revenues will look like. There's a bunch of unknowns yet.
You don't even know what your real estate values are until the county submits those at the end of this month.
and as you know, David, Chris has been working very diligently
Yes.
on a rolling, what I'll call it a rolling timeline that reduces the impact on the fund balance.
Any other comments or questions? If not, we'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Approved.
Who seconded that?
I did.
Sure did.
Okay. Thank you.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Open forum. Anyone in open forum that have any questions or issues for the board? Oh, okay. Any board member? Actually, anyone else in the audience? Any board member have any open forum items? Nope.
There was cake.
There's cake.
Yeah.
Dr. Dewberry, talk us about the.
Well, in honor of board recognition month, we do have some dessert, cake and so forth afterwards. We're hoping that everyone stays to enjoy that. And did we get coffee? Somehow cake and water didn't work for me. I think it's cake. We do. We do, we're all set. We hope that you all stay.
One final thing before we adjourn, I'm going to announce that we will go into exec session after this meeting to discuss personnel matters, so that's our reporting on that. Beyond that, before we get to cake, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Move, do we have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay?
Aye.
Cake time. Please stay for a few minutes.